I don't know nothing.
Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's, brought to you by TicketClub.com. If you're looking for tickets to the game on Sunday, check out Purple PTSD in Vikings territory. We can get you tickets with no fees. It's a membership-based system, which typically costs $50 a year, but with our discount code SKULLPTSD, you get a free 1-year membership on TicketClub.com, which is pretty fancy. I am your host, Joe. Thank God the season is here. Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. Here with Joe. Don't tell me nothing. Oberly.
You really want the season to start?
No.
Speculation time and hope time is the greatest time of the year. I mean, everybody's a Super Bowl champion to be. So
exactly.
As soon as the season starts, everything, all hopes and dreams are dashed, and it's misery, and Joe's self-loathing begins, and oh my God! So I'm surprised the season to start.
I correct one thing you just said. My self-loathing doesn't start; it increases. And I've said this on the show before, I think, but I like the time right before free agency starts, before the draft. I call it the pretendies, because anything is possible. So yeah, right. I'm a little worried. Not worried, just pensive, I guess. It seems like too, and this is maybe too much information and not the most important part, but. And I understand it wholly. Like, I'm not ripping on people or calling them fair weather fans, but our traffic right now is so amazing. And we've had it in the past, the perfect example being the Bradford season where they started 5-0, and you could just see this, like, perfect line of every week increasing people listening to the show, people coming to the site, and then slowly after the bye when they were losing, it just plummeted. So I'm hoping so I can afford food to live, that things start out well. I do worry about a slow start, a discombobulated offense, so on and so forth. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, considering the last time we saw the first team offense, they looked like a JV football team, basically. And by them I mean Kirk Cousins, especially.
How can that be? He's from the Big Ten.
I think he was lowering expectations, so they won't scheme as much against him because, Big Ten guys are all PhDs.
Oh, my.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm confident, though. I mean, how do you feel as of right now going into the season? I guess is the best way to start the show.
Yeah, that's a good question. I usually am pretty optimistic. Coming in, like everybody else, it affects even the curmudgeon-y old man that I am. But I've seen a lot of talk about the Vikings have had their way with the Falcons in the last few years, and that's true. That's true. But I feel a little uneasy. I think the Falcons are a little bit better, and they could be sick of having Zimmer handed to him, have their hat handed to him by Zimmer's defense year after year. So they be coming in with gun blazes. I think it's going to be a really tough game, and I think it's really important to the season to get off on that good start at home. They can't afford to lose any home games, or very few, because their road schedule is pretty tough. So I think this is a huge game, and it will set the tone for the season if they come out and play well, as opposed to sometimes Zimmer's teams get off to a little troublesome start.
And there's been a lot of talk of that from Zimmer himself. I know a lot of people on our message board and commenting on Vikings territory have talked about Zimmer and his it seems more so this offseason, when there was the whole toxic leadership quote-unquote thing from Brett Ellison's dad, Ricky Ellison, and Zimmer brought in Greenway after he retired to ask how he could be a better coach. And one of the bigger points of contention with the players was Zimmer's, he goes and says things negatively about his players to the media. And you and I have talked about that a lot. and the fact that perhaps it's he'll say things on the field, and if it doesn't sink in, he'll toss it out to the media, which obviously the media runs with and loves, as like a final step to motivate guys. But he's been doing a lot of that with, there's multiple times where the defense was being complacent and didn't have the hunger or the drive of the offense, where the young receivers needed to kick it up a notch. He talked about Xavier Rhodes needing to play up to his contract. He seems, then you throw in all the kicker stuff, and it just seems like he's kind of at his wit's end with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, he was nicer to Xavier this morning at his press conference. They asked him about how he was playing in the preseason, and he actually said he thought Xavier had a good preseason. The one play time when he got burned was a communications mix-up. But
when he left that receiver behind him, or when he got
yeah. And I don't know that you get the rest of the fandom to agree with that. But he said he wasn't hurt that he knew of. And so
that's good. Because ironically, I was reading an article from what's his name, Andrew Kramer in the Star Trib this week about Rhodes. It was like the cover story on the sports section about Rhodes doing more Pilates and certain types of stretching exercises and really kind of lowering his workouts to try to stay as healthy as possible this season. And I thought that was a really ironic time to run that story, considering he did look gimpy in that game. And he talked about all of his injuries last year. I think he said like his glutes, his hamstring, his back. He was just really beat up. And
Zimmer mentioned that they've been working with him on technique quite a bit, which seems interesting for a guy that's been in the league this year and been under Zimmer for this long, that he still has to work on technique. But I guess you got to keep perfecting that craft. If you aren't going forward, you're going backwards. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about how important things are going to be at the DB position with the Holton Hill being out and not knowing what they have from Mike Hughes, and he'll be rusty and he's still young. I mean, the fact that they're returning 10 of 11 starters and the 11th is a guy who might as well be a starter. That was just on the Seahawks last year. I think it's Stephen Weatherly. That might be where some of that complacency came from. Zimmer mentioned that these guys are basically saying we're a top 5 or top 10 defense every year. It's kind of like captain's practices playing hockey with all the seniors. They've been there before. They know what to do. Their spots are mostly solidified. They don't need to really play for their lives as much as other guys do. So, yeah, I think the defense will be fine, too, in that last year. After coming off of that Eagles game, I think that broke Zimmer's brain a little bit, and he was really trying to perfect things and create situations where each player had 5 different variables they could think of, and it was just overly complex, and they seemed to be thinking too much and not playing, and just simplifying things a little bit more, having arguably a better defense with Mike Harris being at safety versus Sendejo, and then having Kearse step in when he does. I'm a little more confident in the defense than I am in the offense, just in a lot of ways. Brian O'Neill being out, David Morgan's still out. He didn't count against the 53-man roster. Just from a protection standpoint, I think Elflein has struggled. Nicholson wrote a really great article breaking down the offensive roster, and he kind of broke down each offensive lineman, and clearly that's like the most important part of the season, or that's going to be the focal point.
I kind of go the other way. I worry about the complacency of the defense to a degree. I know Zimmer will have them motivated and they'll be ready to go. They're professionals, so I don't worry too much. But I always worry for a unit that's been together that long to have a drop off, to get a little bit older, to get a little bit maybe comfortable in their spots and maybe make mistakes. So you worry about those things. But the offense I'm kind of excited for. I like bringing in Kubiak and what he can do. I like him working with Stefanski and the new revamped offensive line. Yes, I want O'Neill back, but this line's going to be better. There's no two ways about it than it has been in the past years. And I think the weapons are solidified. They've got Kyle Rudolph looks smaller and fast. I mean, smaller by he's lost some weight, and he's quicker and faster, and he's going to be playing for another season of guaranteed money on his contract, which he doesn't have. You got Dalvin Cook, who hopefully stays healthy the whole season since I drafted him in fantasy football. And you got Diggs and Treadwell, so I'm kind of excited to see
Thielen.
that, Drake. Who did I say? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Freudian slip.
Yes. Thielen. Diggs and Thielen. And I here's a little segue, but I'm really intrigued, but not completely sold on this Josh Doctson acquisition. I think if he works out, what a wonderful find. What a great third person. I mean, I heard third wide receiver. I heard Zimmer talk about him on his press conference today, and he was saying, when he describes him, it sounds like he's describing everything he wanted in Treadwell, but didn't have. He's big. He's got leaping ability. He's got size. He's going to be tough for making grabs. In contested situations. So it was like, man, if that's the case, and he can put it together, and he can stay healthy. What a great third wide receiver when our wide receiver was all of a sudden looking a little bit. Lacking in depth. So
I was surprised that they took or that they brought in 4 receivers, because in the last 5 seasons they've carried 5, 6, 6, and 5, and by 4 I mean when things were announced on Saturday. So the Doctson move makes sense, and it also makes sense because it was widely reported that that's the guy they wanted, not Treadwell, when that draft happened.
Joe, do you think they had it cooking before they finalized their, before they made that decision to only keep 4? They must have already been talking to him and saying, okay, hey, you want to come here because we'd love to have you reunite you with Kirk Cousins again, blah 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 blah, and because that's got to be. I mean, you made the right point. It was surprising for them to only take 4 receivers on that 53.
Yeah, and I think that he was quote unquote disappointment in Washington, just because he was a first-round guy, but I mean his season even last year was his numbers were better than Treadwell's entire career. So there's different levels of disappointment, I guess. He had over almost 600 yards last year. They really wanted him to be more of a every down receiver and not just a down the field guy. And so if you think of him that way, because as we've talked about a million times, there's not going to be a ton of balls to go around for this third receiver position anyway.
Right.
So if you look at him like the what's the opposite of a poor man? A rich man? A rich man's Eldrick Robinson, who was also a guy that had familiarity with Kirk Cousins, who came in and had 5 touchdowns on 15 catches, which was just like gaudy and insane. If you bring a guy in like Doctson, who's good down the field, who's has familiarity with Cousins, it is really exciting. He'll be we had our fantasy drafts over the weekend, and he's obviously he's like a boomer bust guy. There's just not enough balls to go around, but I could see him getting a handful of touchdowns this season. He almost reminds me a little bit of Olabisi Johnson, but just more established and bigger.
But he has had injury problems, hasn't he? Well, yeah, so that's my concern with him. Let's see him get out there, and maybe they won't have to use him as much here as they wanted to use him in.
That's
in
what I'm hoping. If he's just a guy that you rely on, for a couple catches a game, or a couple catches every couple games, Eldrick Robinson style or Jarius Wright style, he should be fine. It's almost the same thing as Amir Abdullah, who I'm a little surprised they kept, but especially in their different positions. But Blasingame had such an amazing preseason, and you know how Zimmer is about fumbles, but Amir Abdullah, he just gets injured. He also fumbles the ball, but he's just not built for the pro game. So maybe using him 5 times a game, just like Doctson, will help. I was really happy that Blasingame ended up on the practice squad, though. That's not super surprising, just because, as we talked about last week, like there's 2 teams that actually have a genuine fullback position. So I don't think there's a huge market for it. But man,
you don't want 2.
He's the heir apparent to C.J. Ham, who Zimmer really talked up this week.
And that's the thing. If you are going to be a team that uses a fullback, you better have somebody backing him up if he gets hurt. Because if that's what your offense requires, And on the other hand, Blasingame is versatile. He used to be a running back in college, so he's like a backup running back as well. So I thought was pretty assured that he was going to get put on the practice squad if he could clear waivers, because he had a great preseason and he's got a lot of talent. He's kind of a hybrid that can really give you some versatility if you need it. So.
Goal line stuff, especially. Yeah.
And Treadwell's gone. And I guess that's about all you can say. It's it was unfortunately it was everything that we all feared it was going to be. When there was a lot of people that they settled for him. They had to get a receiver at the time, so they reached for him, and he was not the guy. And he didn't, despite the fact that he worked his butt off. Reportedly, he just didn't turn into what they needed him to be, so.
Yeah, I wonder how much that devastating leg injury that he had in college.
Yeah.
Had to do with him starting out maybe a little bit slow, still healing, and never really finding his spot. We've talked about Treadwell ad nauseum on this show. I wrote an initial reaction to the initial 53-man roster on both. Actually, I think it was just on Vikings territory. It's still up there. It's one of the trending articles. Good for me. I posted a link to my before that draft. I wrote an article basically saying forget Treadwell and Doctson. The receiver I want is Michael Thomas and Mobo, undrafted free agent Mobo, and then bring in Michael Thomas. It explains my Treadwell theory. I've talked about it a lot on the show. We get a lot of new listeners. I'll just sum it up really quickly. I felt like he was a one-trick pony whose trick doesn't work in the NFL. I posted this in that article as well, but if you look at his combine results, and this could have been a little bit swayed just because he was still perhaps healing a little bit, but for a guy who, you talk about Doctson and what he does with contested balls and being big and strong, Treadwell was in the bottom 20th percentile of vertical jump. He was in the bottom 15 percentile for upper body strength, just bench presses. And so for a guy that you think would be good at contested balls for leaping and overpowering DBs, he just didn't have those tools, and that might work in college, but it isn't going to work. And he tried, like you said. I mean, I remember he was struggling with drops during OTAs, and I remember writing an article saying, should we worry about Treadwell? And people were like, you're insane. And you
that's beside the point.
I'm still bitter about it, clearly. But you talked about him staying after practice on the jugs machine and trying. So I give him credit for that. I don't think he was as tone deaf as like a Cordero Patterson, who was given opportunities from Zimmer and Michael Irvin and just turned them down. I think he did really try. Word is that he's going to sign with Buffalo, though. I think he's there today visiting with them, which is a surprise. I think a lot of people thought maybe Shermer would pick him up because the Giants obviously need help at the position, or even the Seahawks.
Shermer knows him, though. So, I mean, why would he pick him up?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I don't think Shermer was a big fan of his one way or the other. But either way...
Goodbye, Treadwell. I mean, you summed it up. We said enough. He's gone. We got to move on, because this guy is, he just didn't work out, and he's going to go into the fall in the pantheon of people like Christian Ponder and Troy Williamson and blah 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 blah. So unfortunately,
Udezi, what was the guy? We had 2 picks the year of Aaron Rodgers. It was Troy Williamson, and there was a Big Ten defensive lineman we took 18th. Erasmus James. Those were horrible picks, obviously. That draft was bad.
So anyway,
and we'll just touch on this briefly because it's relatively old news at this point, but I know it's going to kind of simmer and come up during the season, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about. And there's a lot of differing opinions amongst our writers group as well. I think Nick Olson wrote a really good piece on this. It's similar to mine in title, but he's just mainly focusing on the offensive 53-man roster. And it's the Slaughter situation. And there were reports that the Vikings were trying to trade him. Why am I blanking on this? Who did they trade and get a 7th-round pick for?
They traded... oh, my.
It'll come to me.
Yes, they traded somebody and got a 7th-round pick. But,
Kirk Cousins.
They traded Kirk Cousins?
Yep, 7th-round pick. Best move ever.
Wow.
No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, they were trying to trade Slaughter. According to Nick Olson's statistics, he has the second best preseason career in adjusted net yards, behind Patrick Mahomes and barely ahead of Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees, which is kind of funny. And we've broken this down a lot. Nick Olson did as well. Just his inability to do the rest of the job. Mannion reportedly is really good on the whiteboard. He's really well read.
Well, that's really good. We need that on the field. Isadora. They traded it.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, he does like a lot of the stuff you would want a backup to do in regards to game planning and helping Cousins. And I don't think that Slaughter's comments to the media helped very much. He was saying a lot of stuff like, I don't care about like that sort of stuff. I don't care about game prep or clock management. I'm a player and I'm a gamer and I go out there.
He said that?
Yes, Nick Olson has quotes. I'm paraphrasing, but he said a lot of really resentful. Like, I don't care what the media has to say about that. I'm like a winner basically, and I don't need it.
Get an agent. Get a PR consultant. Get somebody who can tell you, the right things to say. I mean, if he actually says that to the media. Imagine what he's like in on the field. I mean, when Zimmer's out in the media telling him he's bitter about his clock management problems. I mean, that's just like a flag right there. Hello.
Yeah, that sealed the deal for me. Like, I understand that. I think people need to take into account too. Like, he was playing against threes. For the most part, so he is good, relatively good. He does extend plays. He has a good arm, so on and so forth. But
I extend plays in the Sandlot, so what the heck?
Oberle doesn't need to read no playbook.
That's right, I'm a player, man.
Draw it up in the sand and let's go. Yeah, he just was saying all the wrong things, clearly. And
sounds like doing them too, and that's what did him in.
Especially on a team that is really clock management and field position and the small things are super important on the field and to Zimmer. He's a stickler for that kind of stuff. It's just, I get it. I get that fans aren't happy with Cousins. I do think just a quick little tangent on this. Maybe it was Connor Wicklander or Sean Borman this morning. I saw a tweet pop up comparing Cousins' contract to Jared Goff's, and how big Goff's contract is. And I think a lot of people, I want to say this without sounding elitist and score Northy. I think some people only remember Cousins' contract in the context of the time. The biggest contract in NFL history. Instead it really more set the market, and now everyone's going beyond it. So looking at it now, regardless of his performance, it's not as gaudy as it was at the time.
The other thing about it is Cousins changed teams, and everybody else is re-signing with their own team. That's getting bigger contracts. They thought Cousins moved from one team to another, whereas this is an extension for what's his face, Goff, and Wilson had an extension, and everybody else had an extension. Dak Prescott's going to get an extension. It's like, there's a difference there, and I'm not sure what the significance of it is per se, but it's you're going to have to overpay if you're going to be in a bidding war with all these other teams. If you're just re-signing with your own team, you can probably, you might not have to spend that much. The Vikings had to spend what they had to spend to get him, and whether or not you want him or not is irrelevant to that point. But you certainly can look at it now and say they spent too much, sure, but they had to, and now everybody else is going to have to pay even more for getting their own quarterback back, apparently.
Yeah, and the Jets were a big part of that. The Jets seem to love the Vikings. They tried to steal Jeff Badet. I don't know where he ended up. He clearly didn't make the team. They did, in regards to the kicking game, a lot of people are apoplectic about giving up that fifth for nothing, basically. And They did try to sign Vedvik to the practice squad, but the Jets sniped him. So that's part of it. If he would have made the practice squad, maybe. I mean, I think people still would have been upset. But, it is what it is. They tried. I'm not as big of a... I know you need as many bullets in the gun as possible for the draft because it's just a crapshoot, and I know that Diggs was the 5th-round pick and everything, but, I mean, they tried, and I have to applaud that. It didn't work out, but, people were obsessed with Vedvik. I mean, there was all the people, Bears fans kept editing his Wikipedia to say that he came to the Bears and basically won them the Super Bowl with a 70-yard field goal. There's people that clearly bought into his whatever.
I was excited about him. I was in awe of him stroking these long flipping kicks. With that seemingly effortless. From the first kick I saw him make to the last, he just looks like he was out there just hitting chip shots with his 9-iron. It was amazing. But there's a couple ways to look at it. I thought about writing this story on this long, sordid trip of Zimmer and the kicking game because it's getting quite amazing what's happened. And
they signed another punter and a kicker this week.
Right, you almost can't keep up with it. I don't even know Chilcoot or some of these guys. I don't even know who they are anymore. But the point is, I saw somebody who had a slightly different take on it, and I thought was kind of interesting. He said, you have to give them some credit that you think that the rest of your team is so ready to go and you're filled at every other position that you need that you're trying to fine tune this unit so that this isn't the reason you're going to crap out in a big game. It is a big part of games come down to this. We saw it last year with Daniel Carlson, and Mark Craig had a Q&A with Zimmer in the paper this weekend in which Zimmer said, I probably should have kept Daniel Carlson around. That saying hindsight. So
he hit 95% of his kicks in Oakland. I know we talked about that, and I know that there's less pressure, but damn it.
Yeah, that's true, and I still contend to that. I'll wait to see how he does in his first big pressure kick this season if the Raiders ever do get better. But it's interesting because I give Zimmer credit for saying that, and at least having that. But by the other side of the coin is, dude, you really don't have this figured out, do you? Come on. No. It's crazy and it's amazing what's happening. But I will give them, like you did a little bit earlier, I will give them a little credit. They're really trying to figure it out, and I guess what for what that's worth.
I bring this up relatively often because it shaped my worldview in regards to the Vikings. So my it's not really a worldview, but I came of age watching the Vikings in the Randy Moss era and the Red McCombs era, and I remember being at a Titans game. My best friend at the time, his dad owned Warner Stallion, the appliance store. So we would get really great tickets because they bought a lot of advertising. And we were like in the second row behind the end zone against the Titans, and Red McCombs was walking by. This was the season that he got fined for being so far under the salary cap that he was fined for it. And all these people were like trampling each other to try to go up and shake his hand. And I remember this was me back when I used to drink, and I started screaming, like, why are you shaking his hand? He's awful. And so looking at it that way and then looking at it with what the team's doing, and I know that they're not necessarily getting results from it, but it really feels since especially the Teddy Bridgewater injury and they traded the first-round pick to get Bradford, that they identified that they have a window and they are doing everything within their power financially and otherwise to take advantage of that. And while it might not work or they haven't made the best decisions, I appreciate it, but then also I understand the argument of a guy like Glenn Taylor, who's been a really great owner financially and paid for things when free agents decide to come here, which for whatever reason basketball players hate coming to Minnesota. But just making terrible decision after terrible decision. I don't think that's the case with this management or ownership. I think they've made a lot of great decisions, and they're very, very close. So I
have to remember that when you get to this point, in this league, everybody's close. I mean, we're going to see that in our division this year. I'm not segueing yet to the NFC North, but Detroit's going to be better. They're all going to be close. And when you get to the playoffs and you get to the playoff tournament, there's just, it doesn't matter if you think your team's better. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to win the Super Bowl. You still have to go out there and by hook or by crook and win those games. You're right. They are getting close. They are consistently, they're up and down in the Zimmer regime. They go from a great season to a subpar season, and then they rebound and another. So I think this team is as opposed to the Timberwolves have put good decision makers in place. You okay over there, Joe?
Yeah, sorry.
And I don't know if Glenn Taylor has always done that. Has always put the right decision makers in place. Khan, they had the wrath of Khan over there for a while, and it was not good.
Well, but, what's his face from the Celtics?
I'm gonna disagree.
I know.
So don't get me started. Kevin McHale's a great friend of mine. I thought he did a great job for that team. So
how? Well, that's a segue, but.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I think they're close, and they have this. Zimmer believes in defense, and he wants his offense to to clear the path for his defense. He wants them to have ball control so he can keep his defense off the field, because when that defense is rested, it's one of the best in the league. And so that's how he feels he's going to win the game: run the ball and have a decent passing game. And long time consuming drives that wears down the other team's defense. It's a tried and true method, and that's how he wants to do it. If somebody other days today is making it says the league's passing league that you got to fire throw. Yeah, that breeds some success, but I don't know how many. I don't know if you can win year after year that way. So
clearly it didn't work the last season.
Exactly.
It got him to a little, a hair above 500. Cousins had one of the best statistical seasons in Vikings history, but it just became too much, especially with the amount of hits he was taking and the lack of support in the run game. So yeah, I do think. But who was responsible for the Joe Smith thing? That's the thing that bothers me the most, because that hamstrung this team, or the Timberwolves.
And that was actually Glenn Taylor.
Okay, so that's I don't think he made the best decisions either, your buddy, but that was that was so bad.
He was instructed to do that by Glenn Taylor.
Yeah, so that kind of makes it better for him anyway. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people are kind of down on the team, and I get that, but I do think that, they have a very good shot this season. I am a little perplexed in regards to, I'm doing kind of a power ranking roundup, which I do every week, and a lot of the national powers that be are have the Packers anywhere from first to third, and I don't. And this isn't just Packers hate at all. I don't understand that because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of new things. They have a brand new offense that's actually probably going to be relatively similar to the Vikings offense, with LaFleur being running a similar offense to what Kubiak does. So I think it'll be similar but different, obviously, because they're not fully investing in the Kubiak offense. I've heard some reports of Rodgers and LaFleur not really getting along, which isn't a good sign.
Those are old.
Yeah, I don't know how much stock I put into them, but it makes me happy. So, but yeah, it just seems like, I don't know, especially on defense. They finally opened up their purse strings a little bit. They brought in a couple big defensive free agents in Zadarius Smith and I forget who the other one was. They got Rashawn Gary and Darnell Savage Jr. via the draft. Maybe it was Preston Smith. Either way, they got two edge rushers, which is a little concerning for the Vikings. They did let Mike Daniels go, which was a big surprise, but he it cost a lot of money, ended up in Detroit. But, they did keep... LaFleur did keep the D coordinator in Mike Pettin, so I think they're not necessarily starting from scratch like they are on offense, but there's a lot of new people, 4 new guys, the ones I just mentioned, and 2 from the draft, and I just don't think that I think the best quote to sum up my feelings came from the Packers GM, who said, I can't answer a lot of these questions till the middle of the season. Ask me in the middle of the season. That's when we'll know, because we just have to get things together, and it's going to take time. And so that makes me a little happy that the Vikings are facing them week 2, because I feel like they might be a different team when they face them week 16. But I don't get, outside of, Aaron Rodgers is good, but last year was his worst year statistically since his rookie year. He had only, I put that in quotes, 25 touchdowns.
But he was playing hurt.
Yeah, I don't know how good their line is. It just seems like, I don't know, it just seemed weird that they got rid of Mike Daniels instead of trying to, maybe they did try to restructure him, but it just doesn't seem like a team on the precipice of a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. No, you can go back and forth, and either the Packers are getting some love or the Vikings are getting some love, and people that are a team that's not getting any is the Bears? Which really confuses me. I don't see it.
Do you think it's the change of that they lost Fangio or something? Or
that's part of it. They also lost a couple people on their defensive side of the ball. I mean, they certainly didn't lose the big stud. I can't even think of his name, Khalil Mack, but they lost a couple guys in their defense, so that's going to hurt them a little bit. But they also picked up a decent defensive coordinator. He's a long storied, great defensive coordinator. So it's like I don't think it'll be a new defense, perhaps, but it will.
The word on the street is that it'll be similar. Like a similar 3-4 everything, but that he's going to blitz a lot more. And with Khalil Mack and his ability to take over a game, that scares the shit out of me, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they'll be decent. They still got 2 decent running. Are both Howard and Tariq Cohen still there? And
I thought they brought in that rookie. They let Howard go, and they got a rookie.
That's right.
In the second round, because they didn't have a first round pick. That was actually a really good pickup.
They'll still have a decent running game, and I think Trubisky is only getting better. I mean, he's a decent player who can, strong quarterback who can run. So always a threat for the Vikings. So I don't, even Patricia over in Detroit is getting his team to where he wants it to be. They're going to be better. And
T.J. Hawkinson scares me.
Yeah, Zimmer said as much at his conference today. He says they're going to be better, and there's no two ways about it. There's the difference between the best team and the worst team in this league and in the divisions are always very slim. So we all know that people wonder why are looking for someone to be dominant like the Yankees of the whatever decades ago, and it just doesn't happen. The NFL's not built that way.
No, I think Detroit will be very much improved. Hawkinson very well could be the new Gronk, and that if you have to face him twice a season, that's no fun. On top of the fact that the Vikings under Zimmer have always struggled with the Lions for whatever reason. The only thing with the Bears is I think that, we've seen this when you have a team that is that physical and puts so much energy into winning, and they lose because of a double doink, that can really deflate them. And like you said, the difference, there's so much parity in the NFL. I mean, every year it's like especially the wild card teams are different. And, we've seen that with the Bears, too.
Teams go up and down. I mean, a team that played well one year goes down the next year. The Vikings do. And then they're back up the next year because they figure out what they've done wrong and rebuild and fill some holes. And so it's a crapshoot. There's nothing that you can, count on, although, Sports Illustrated just came out with their prediction, and they've got the Chiefs beating the Vikings in the Super Bowl. So go
really?
Figure. Yes, they do.
Oh, I gotta find that. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of love for the Vikings, so I was gonna mention that. Power ranking wise, I see it's like between the one I was looking at. I think it was CBS Sports. They were 14th, and they had moved up 6 spots that week, despite losing 2. I mean, there's 4 preseason games, so whatever that's worth.
I've schooled you on these things. This is all happy horse pocket. It doesn't mean doodly squat.
I know. I was gonna put that on the agenda, and I still fit it in, but I crossed it out because I'm just like, I know Joe. At this point, it cares very little. It's either that or fantasy football. We should do a deep dive into our draft. That'll make you happy.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of which, so the Falcons game, there's a really great article written by Deshaun Vaughn on Purple PTSD. about Zimmer has faced the Falcons 3 times. He's 3-0. The main key to those games have been Zimmer/Rhodes' ability to disguise their coverages between man and when they're really running a zone, playing 2 high safeties. There's a lot. Deshaun has some video clips showing that. And you have a guy like Julio Jones who almost averages 100 yards a game, but against the Vikings he's never topped 60. He has not caught a touchdown against the Vikings. And like you said earlier in the show, that might be something that Matt Ryan, he played as well as almost his MVP year last season. They just had a lot of injuries on defense, especially that they might have seen it, and maybe they're really gonna come out guns blazing trying to get around that. I think that.
If our writers are picking it up, that they're certainly their team has picked up on it. So.
For sure, and you always wonder how. That's what's so amazing about Belichick is this consistent success, despite the fact that people clearly are studying him left and right and trying to find little weaknesses in what they do. And they have a lot of blue-collar players in that team. It's not a lot of superstars, obviously. But, yeah, I think that the game, for me, one of the main keys is outside of Rhodes and Jones, Calvin Ridley last year had 800 yards and 10 touchdowns. He really excels when teams focus on Julio. Julio's been injured, but he's a full go for week 1. So Trey Waynes, Mackenzie Alexander, even like Curse, and their ability to shut down Calvin Ridley, I think is going to be super important. But yeah, like I said, I think they're a lot healthier on defense this year. They were similar to the Vikings, around 500 last season, but they're a really good team, and it's a tough opener.
It is. For what it's worth, I just heard. Paul Allen, I believe, on KFan say that he thinks they'll win the division in the South, while most of the national people are picking the Saints to win the Super Bowl. So I don't know. It sounds like they have another tough division down there as well with those 2 good teams. They got Carolina, who's never out of it, and I think the Bucs are going to be improved with their new coach Bruce Arians. So it's like I was saying earlier, the difference between good and bad is so slim, and you could have a team that ends up with a 7-9 record, but they're probably still a decent team. So I think it's a tough go first opening game. I'm glad it's at home. The place will be rocking. It gives the Vikings a chance to beat a really decent, I think what seems to be a decent team at home right out of the gate, but they have to come ready for it and do it, because next week you got Green Bay. It doesn't get any easier. They don't get a breather until the hapless Oakland Raiders and Antonio Brown come in here in week 3. But
depending on his helmet situation, but then they have the Bears right after that.
Right.
The first 4 games, it's incredibly important. I expect to see, I think the Vikings played a lot of things really close to their chest this preseason. I think they did basic versions of complex things they're going to do but they were succeeding at it initially, so they didn't really need to up things until they really ran into the Cardinals. But having Dalvin Cook back, I think, will be huge. I think Alexander Madison is going to get a lot more action than when I drafted him in both of our leagues, the Dynasty League and the other one, just in case Cook gets injured, and also to take away your handcuff just out of
Thanks. I was gonna go get him. I knew someone would do it before I could, but you took him on opening night.
Well, I'm not gonna play him. But
yeah, I know. But you took him. You took him during our draft. I didn't realize that. I thought he was still out there.
No, I took him in both.
You bastard.
I know. So I just felt like, but the reason I brought it up was because you click on the player and it shows like predicted stats. They had him with 30 yards the entire season, and I'm like, okay, they are not paying attention to Vikings football at all.
I didn't pick him up because I thought that would be bad juju for the Vikings and Dalvin Cook. I figured you got to get behind the guy and believe that he's going to be there for 16 games, and it's crucial. But I guess if that's the way you want to play it, Joe, and just kind of be hoping for Dalvin Cook to go down, well, there you go.
Well, it'll be my fault. The way I said it in the chat at the time was, this will be if he gets injured, knock on wood, it'll be a little silver lining for me to get through it. But I also think, in full seriousness, that they might, just based on how they treated Dalvin this preseason and not having him play in those first 2 games because the fields were new, that they might really limit his touches or put him on a pitch count.
They absolutely will.
I don't think they're going to give him the ball 25 times every single game. I don't think. I think they want to keep him as healthy as possible, and so I do think Madison and that whole. I mean, Boone has shown how great he's been. Abdullah is very dangerous and can come in and break one at any time. Boone can as well. I think that, but really, that's going to be. And it's interesting, him and Devonta Freeman went to the same high school, I think, at the same time. And that's going to be a big component of the game as well. Freeman played, 2 games last year? I think he's healthy now, or healthier. So I'll be interested to see how the Vikings rush defense looks as well, with Linval Joseph being back, Weatherly being there.
I agree with you. I don't think, that it kind of makes Dalvin Cook not a great first-round pick, even though I took him in, because he is going to be limited. They're going to have him on a pitch count certainly early until I see how strong he is, and he's not. They got a great backup in Madison. He will get his time. There's no two ways about it. He'll score some points as well. So I totally agree with you on that. I think it'll be interesting to watch what the Falcons defense do with the Vikings receiving unit. Are they going to try to double cover Diggs, or are they going to, now with Thielen's getting all the love and getting all, they people ranking him ahead of Diggs, not only because Diggs was double covered at times and Thielen was open. It should be interesting to see and what other teams, are going to do against the Vikings offense. And where was we reading? I was reading last year. They knew that the Vikings weren't going to pass the ball as games went, or weren't going to run the ball as the game went on. So they would just sit there and sell out for the pass, and they knew they could take it away from them. That's how they defended them. Well, hopefully this year it's such a more varied and new offense that they don't know about, that the Vikings will have a lot of weapons, some 2 tight end sets with Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph, and will make it tough for defenses to figure out exactly what's going on, and that will open it up for everybody. So,
especially with Irv Smith lining up as a wide receiver a lot this preseason, right. I think they're just going to be finding ways to get him the ball. There was that great video of Cousins just with him and Irv Smith and inside field at TCO working on things together, and I think that the history of Kubiak shows that he tends to favor tight ends that are more multifaceted, that can block, and there was a lot of reports of them recently being surprised by how well Irv Smith Jr. could block. I think they knew he was a decent blocker, but not as good as he was. So I fully expect after a couple seasons last year, talking to Kyle Rudolph and him being all excited about running not just 2 tight end sets but 3 tight end sets, and that never, in the passing game anyway, that never really materialized. I just think there's so many options and so many weapons. I could see Cousins, getting the ball to 8 or 9 different guys in this game, 7, 8 anyway. And that's exciting. That's they were putting that on film for people to look at, the 2 tight end sets in the preseason. They wanted them to see that, and it's it's the reason that I contended, in some of our chats and things that we had talked about amongst us and the writers, that I said they're not going to get rid of David Morgan. They're going to put him on the pup until he figures out what the heck's wrong with him, because they value the tight ends around here, and they know in David Morgan they have a good, reliable one. He's a great blocker who can catch and get first downs when you need it. So I was glad to see that they did put him on the pup list, and hopefully he returns at some point. He's healthy, because it just adds more to this offense that can certainly use it, especially when it comes to protecting the passer. Yeah, and you brought this up earlier too. I think that it was strange to me, and we discussed this at the time, how with the historical amount of success that Cousins and Thielen were having last year, that teams were still seemingly scheming to take Diggs out of the game. I think Diggs and Cousins, because of that, don't have the rhythm that Thielen and Cousins do. But I don't really worry about it just because you could
I'll get him back.
You could throw the ball 5 yards behind him, an inch off the ground, and he would do some sort of Matrix-style move to catch it. He's going to get his catches.
Yes.
And that, it's just, I think Diggs is more of a boomer bust guy, despite how, I think that, I don't want to say that to limit his importance, because, he does draw a lot of coverages and he does help in a multitude of ways. But Thielen is just gonna get his touches. He just does. He lines up more in different places more than Diggs does. But beyond that, I'm interested to see what BB does, if anything. I picked him up in our Dynasty League just because there was 50 rounds, and I figured with half-point PPR, who knows. But he had a bad preseason after having a miraculous OTA minicamp sort of thing. I was disappointed. I was really excited to see what he could do. He had some drops, which Nick Olson called concentration drops. He had that interception that people say was his fault. I don't know if he got nervous or what, but that's not what you want from your third receiver, obviously, on this team.
Before I go on to BB, I just want to say I just want to keep Diggs and Thielen healthy all season, and they're going to be a headache for defensive coordinators. I don't care. Go ahead, Bill Belichick, pick your poison and double cover one of them. The other guy's going to get his. So it's just the way it's going to be. BB was a little disappointing in the games. Made some mistakes if that's the case, where he ran the wrong route and that turned into a pick six the other way. But I still think his value and probably his work ethic are going to change that around, and he will come through as called on. He's probably the kind of guy that's going to benefit more than anybody from the acquisition of Josh Doctson, because it takes the pressure off him a little bit. You use him in the situations where you want to, rather than all the time as a third down receiver, and he's gonna perform when called upon, because that's kind of what he did last year. So, and I think he will be a backup holder. He will be maybe a punt returner, and he'll certainly, he's worthwhile having on the team. I think the more I think about having Doctson on this team, really takes the pressure off the backups, the depth of that unit, and there's a number of different guys you can go to there that can really help you out. So I think it was a good move by the team.
Totally. One thing last year that people, were looking at Cousins is completion percentage, and they were saying, well, he throws a lot of short passes, a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage because he doesn't have any time, a la Bradford. And there were times this preseason where the Vikings could have got a ton of yards, maybe even a touchdown on screen passes when the opposing team was basically doing an all-out blitz. And Cousins his touch passes, the short ones, weren't great. One of them, he was under immense pressure, running backwards. He had to throw it over the D lineman. But I want to see some better screens and that sort of thing, because every running back that the Vikings kept can catch passes out of the backfield, and I think that's going to be a huge component of their game this year. So I really want to see that. Yeah, totally. Which is ironic because he's so good down the field, and it's those little quote-unquote gimmies that aren't gimmies that he's been struggling with. So I think that'll be big too.
Maybe it comes with practice. The more opportunities you have to do them, the more you get your muscle memory down, the more that comes natural to you to make that pass. And they didn't do enough of it last year. So I know they were looking at it this preseason, and I think you'll see a heck of a lot more of it. And it's just, you got to have that. Anybody has to have that when you got a team that's that's going to be coming. I mean, Khalil Mack's going to be coming. Over at you. You've got to be able to somehow circumvent that pass rush by being able to hit a short screen out of the backfield. Then that keeps them honest. Then they can't just go balls out and come in on you. So I hope that's a huge part of the offense. I hope that Cousins is finds its way to complete a whole bunch of those. Because like you said, all the receivers that they have can catch the ball and do something with it. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, Khalil Mack scares me. I'm just going to leave it at that. He's such a disruptor, more so than pretty much anyone. Maybe because we see him twice this season, but God, he is just a monster. But you and I both mentioned that the Vikings have to get off to a good start this season, and I almost feel the same amount of pressure in regards to getting off to a good start in our game score prediction contest that we do every year.
Oh my!
I always end up at like 50 points behind after 1 or 2 games. So I put a lot of thought into this. I got about an hour of sleep last night. I had one of those old school calculators with the paper that comes out, and I think I got it. So I know you haven't written your game preview yet. So
yeah, I haven't thought about it.
I haven't even had a chance to cheat, and that's what's extra sad is I more often than not know what yours is going to be, so I could Price is Right you, and I still fail. But I'll go first. I do think the Vikings are going to win. I think it'll be close, though. I think that the offensive line is going to take some time to gel, especially if O'Neal's coming back, having missed the time that he has. We'll see how things go. I'm a little pensive just because of how that Cardinals game went, and people, even my dad the other day was saying, oh, they're running a lot of stunts, and I'm like, well, that's what happens in the regular season. That doesn't make me feel any better. So with that in mind, I don't think it'll be a barn burner. Hopefully, I think the Vikings will win, but it'll be 24 to 21 actually.
Oh my God! You got to be kidding me. That's my number.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know you. That's why I wanted to go first. I figured out your strategy is to go for the averages, and then, my whole 42 to 3. That is not going to happen this year.
Well, I didn't really even think about this since I had forgotten about the prediction segment. I'm like the Vikings defense. I've become complacent in my year after year. So I'm a little behind the 8 ball here. But as you were talking, I was saying, okay, 24-21 Vikings. But now I have to change that because you've given that score. So. I'm going to go, I want to say they're going to win by field goal because of all the problems that the Vikings have had with the kicking game, and I think Dan Bailey's going to be a stud.
Me too.
So I think I'm going to go with more field goals than touchdowns this week as the offense kind of gets going. I'm going to go 23-20. I know that doesn't vary it and make it too exciting, but we'll see who comes in, and just remember that my initial score was 24-21.
It should be, it'll be fun. We'll be live chatting the game for people that haven't gone on Purple PTSD. We have this new sort of proto social media live chat message board mixture that's really cool. We're calling it Vikesgeist, Zeitgeist, and it's obviously free to use. It takes 2 seconds to sign up. We live chat during games. Every article gets posted in the message board. We have a ton of other Vikings news stuff there too. It's almost like an aggregator. So if you want to find a place just to see what all the news is from different websites, we do have that. We were posting links to basically everything, and you can comment on them and interact with the writers of each article. It's actually pretty cool. So hopefully, as things go, people will continue to sign up. We've been getting a lot of love from Bleacher Report, which means so much to us. It's insane, just the amount of new eyes on the network and on the show itself. It's just been, it really does feel like we've made it, and it makes me want to cry, so I will leave it at that. But yeah, tune in next Tuesday or Wednesday, depending, for coverage of the game. I am bringing back my show, The Smoke Break, which despite this show, as I'm sure people can hear, I'm actually trying to quit smoking, so I might have to switch it to the nicotine gum break. But I will cover. I'll do a short video on Twitter and hopefully YouTube Live at the same time, before the game, halftime, and after the game. So that'll be a live video show. I might be joined by some people from the website. We can do a Q&A afterwards if people want to ask questions. Our other flagship show about the labor has returned. It's got new hosts in Kirby O'Connor. Sean Borman was on the show before, so people are used to that. Nick Olson checks in from time to time. So keep an eye out for that. I'm sure they'll be doing something after the game as well, but there'll just be a lot of content from here until the game starts. So hopefully you guys will check all of that out, and then check out ticketclub.com as well, because it's a pretty sweet deal. It took me like 3 years to negotiate. So this has been Morning Joe's for the 4th of September. I will catch you next time. Skol.